If you are a subscriber on the YouTube channel, that means that you've gotten your notification. You know that we're live, and we're going to be getting into this the meat of the whole thing in about 3 minutes' time. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Thank you very much indeed for subscribing, for hitting the notification bell, and for being very patient with us, considering that last week we did have to cancel the show. It was upsetting. It wasn't something that I wanted to happen, but at the end of the day, it was completely. It was life interrupting. It really was. Everything just piling on at once. It was a case of a leak in the house, which meant we had to deal with all of that. And Katrina Fox as well from Comic Sketch Art. She was running around and getting herself sorted for a convention, which she's currently at right now. It meant that it was prudent to just put a hold on the Hangout and just launch into it fresh as a daisy today. As always, I often say that I'm going to be doing a Patreon only stream directly after the show, and at which point things again just kind of take over and we don't get around to do it. I will be doing a Patreon only support broadcast stream after this show. If you want to support us, even just a few pennies into the pot, it really does help us keep doing what we do. It allows us to pay great news for us. So we'll be sending her some pennies. We've got all the guys currently at Designer Con as well. So we're looking forward to getting all the things up from that show over the course of the next couple of days. So any support you can give us on the Patreon page, it really is very much appreciated. Also, if you are watching on any of the streams, if you're watching on Facebook, Twitch, or on YouTube, if anyone wants to step up and kind of moderate and make sure that we don't have anybody acting inappropriately, that's probably a good idea. So if you could just keep a close eye on those. I know we've got Danbury is watching from Anaheim. What are you doing watching this? You're at Designer Con, sir. Bugger off. Go and enjoy the rest of the con. Into the Blue Mister is watching from Wales. Hello, Dan. Hello there. Andrew English is watching from London. I suspect there's going to be a little bit of a mini conversation going on in the chat box about Designer Con. Andrew English is asking how everything's going, and Sarita P is asking, how is Designer Con going? So, yeah, I'm sure we're going to get a couple of comments from Dan about how that's all gone. So yeah, looking forward to getting all that content from Designer Con up on the site over the course of the next couple of days. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. Right. So top of the shop. It is 10 a.m. Pacific. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. It's 6 p.m. GMT, which means it is Talkin Con, a cup of tea with Englishman in San Diego. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. My name is Leonard Sultana, and each and every week we talk Comic-Cons, we talk all the kind of bits and pieces that float around and entertain us at such shows. And we also talk about some great publishers and creators of comics and comic art that appear at such events. And that's why I'm really grateful that we've got ourselves our first of two guests today. We've got DAMIAN WASSEL who's joining us. Hello, DAMIAN. How are you, sir?
Hi, Leonard. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Let me see if I can just put you... I was hoping I was going to get you just right into the frame, because I'm still trying to work out StreamYard. You are the main dominant person on the screen, but we'll go side by side and we'll do this conversation like this. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm certain we'll also get a couple of comments and questions from the chat room as well. Guys, wherever you're watching, if you're watching on Periscope, if you're watching on Twitch, if you're watching on YouTube, any questions you have for DAMIAN, do jump in. And anything you want to ask, because I'm certain there's several people that want to ask about just how well Vault has done and the explosion in the popularity of the books over the course of the last couple of years, because it really has been encouraging and heartwarming to see just how well Vault has done. First things first, introduce yourself and explain what Vault Comics is all about.
Yeah, hi, I'm the CEO and publisher of Vault Comics. Vault was launched in 2017 by my brother and cousin, Nathan. So we founded Vault with the goal of filling what we saw as a sort of open position in the comics market to be the publisher of the very best science fiction, fantasy, and supernatural horror comics around. And we've been aiming to do that ever since. Over the last few years, we've brought some really beloved comics to the market, including Heathen, Wasted Space, These Savage Shores, Friendo, Fearscape, a number of other things you can see on the wall behind me, like The Plot. And it's been a lot of fun making, wonderful books to share with the comics world.
I think the thing that's really impressed me about Vault is just how brave the lineup has been. I think when you see publishers get started, you kind of see them taking baby steps. They're just wanting to establish themselves. They're wanting to stake their claim in the landscape, and that's fine. But that often means sometimes the risks get taken a little bit further down the line. You didn't. Vault just kind of exploded straight out the gate with some very strong, very creator-based. In other words, there was very strong voice when it comes to the people that were putting the books together. What would you say is that what kind of defines what a Vault book is?
Well, before I dig into that, since this is a sort of fan-focused show, I want to explain our rationale a little bit. So comics are a really hard medium to read, right? There's this public perception that you're dealing with something very easy, something very superficial, but in fact you're not. They're an extremely formally elaborate medium. So they're hypertextual. You've got image and text going on at the same time. And as a consequence, anybody who cut their teeth reading comics from an early age and has been reading comics for decades, they're a really good reader, like an extraordinarily good reader. They're sensitive to formal nuance. They're able to sustain awareness of what's going on with a character, in some cases for decades. And that means that, they deserve great books and they're capable of enjoying great, complicated, rich books. And so, when we came in the market, we thought, this is what the market deserves. Books that are risk-taking, bold, interesting, and really taking advantage of the formal richness of the medium. And so from a storytelling perspective, that's absolutely what the brand is about. It's about finding titles that are doing the best work the creators can be doing in the comics medium. We always ask people when we're making acquisitions, what are the stories that you're desperate to tell you don't think anyone else will greenlight? That's what we ask for. And as a consequence, it means that we have a line that doesn't feel or look very much like other comic lines out there right now. And that's made it, I think, a great deal easier for us from a marketing perspective to create our own space.
That makes sense. But like I say, the book, well, you said it that it's very much about the creator making a story that they feel that they have to tell. And that's very strong acquisitions that you've made. It's a very bold choice to come straight out of the gate to get those creators. Where do you find them? And also considering our theme of this podcast, how important is conventions in networking and finding those stories?
Conventions are essential to that. We would never have started as a business without having gone out on the convention circuit for some time prior to launching Vault. So my brother, Adrian, and my cousin, Nathan, and actually my father, Nathan's uncle, we'd co-created some graphic novels that performed pretty well critically and sold about as well as something can sell on the convention circuit alone. And while we were out there sort of, hawking those books, we met a lot of folks, did a lot of networking, learned a lot about the industry before launching Vault. And we never would have been able to find the talent that we worked with early on without being out there on the convention circuit.
Fair enough. Because I've seen you at conventions, because I think the last time I saw Vault was, I think it was 2018 at San Diego Comic-Con. I think I saw you there. Yes, I think it was. Yes.
Were you in New York this year?
I wasn't.
Okay.
That's definitely a sore point of contention, which the people who are in the chat, they know about this. There's a travel company, or was a travel company here in the UK, which was a staple of the main
Oh,
high street.
yes.
Thomas Cook, of which I bought my flights to go with them, and then 8 days before I was about to fly out to New York, the company folded, so I wasn't able to actually make it. But the last time I saw you, like I say, San Diego Comic-Con 2018, and you were set up very much in the heartland of the comics publishers. You were very much, it was not the biggest booth in the world, but you were in there and you were mixing up with the big guys. Considering where you've come from, that was just 2 years ago, to a point where you are now in the top 10 comics retailers out there. We saw the stats a couple of weeks ago, which I'm certain are currently blown up, poster sized in the office. The success that Vault's gone. Just when it comes to the convention landscape, and like you say, it's very essential for networking, but also to get a presence on the floor. How difficult is it to kind of get your foot in the door and to get that little piece of landscape on the convention floor?
You know, it depends greatly, as I'm sure you're aware, having attended so many conventions over the years, as to which convention you're attending. So we do a number of small regional shows every year, my personal favorite of which is a show in Sioux Falls, South Dakota called SuperCon.
We are fans. We know it well.
It's a great show. It's a not-for-profit show, and it's such an important community event there. It's probably my favorite convention we do every year. And going to that show couldn't be easier. We're so fully supported. They help bring creators there. It's a wonderful event. There are other shows, in the middle of the spectrum run by for-profit entities, globe-spanning for-profit entities that are, just as easy to deal with as your particular customer service representative happens to be for that individual show. And so some shows are easier than others. One of the shows put on by a company like that is our sort of flagship show every year, Emerald City. That's in Seattle. It's a phenomenal show. Our account rep for ReadPop for that show couldn't be better to interact with, and they've been absolutely aces at helping us establish a footprint there and really make that a home event. And for us, that show's really important. It's the only major comic convention in our neck of the woods. So we're based in Missoula, Montana, sort of tucked away in the mountains of the US. And, Seattle is 8 hours drive from us, but it's sort of our home show. And then, there are other shall we say, flagship events where the organization can be less than helpful. I won't point any fingers, but some shows can be pretty hard to navigate, and much as the sort of boots on the ground are doing their level best to help everybody have a good show, the upper management doesn't do much to help new companies get in the door.
That's a shame. Well, that's why I was really curious. Sorry, I really am I'm fighting with my microphone tonight. I do apologize. Certainly one thing that I've found with Vault, and certainly when you come representing, at, say, shows here in the UK, is that you've been very supportive of having your creators be the ambassadors for the brand. And I've kind of seen that as well at some of the US shows as well. How important is that to take place? Because we've recently had Thought Bubble here in the UK, and you had, yes, your UK representative, Tara, doing a great job, but you also had the White Noise Boys behind the table and very much flying the Vault flag. Is it very much a case of the creators themselves being the brand managers or the brand representatives of Vault Comics?
Wherever possible, we try to have actual staff from the business present, but it's hard. We have a very small team, so Vault runs on an extremely tight team, much smaller than most other publishers of our stature, and so it can be really hard to offline members of the team for conventions and still also hit, production details. So production deadlines, I should say. Our production manager, Ian, loves conventions, but he almost never gets to go to them because his job is it's so important that he's there in the office. And so we value the UK and Europe incredibly as regions for our fans and for our books. The UK, I think, was behind the city of New York, the first place that really embraced Vault as a brand, and Ireland as well. So Big Bang in Ireland, and then Rob, the buyer for Forbidden Planet, they really got behind our brand early on. And so we wanted to do our best to actually have a presence there this year, but we couldn't, afford time or cost of sending the entire team there. So, we worked with our creators to make sure we could put on a good show. And I think it's important for our brand that creators are often out in front, because the line wouldn't look or feel or read the way it does without them.
Cool. Okay, certainly something else which has struck me about Vault, like we say, we've talked about the success over a relatively short period of time. And I'm certain that we're going to be seeing at conventions such as New York, Emerald, San Diego, etc., a slightly bigger presence, which will represent that level of growth. But that can also be difficult to manage as well, because then the company starts growing a little bit beyond or faster than it's possibly needing to do. You're wanting to very much keep the strong base of what you've already developed so far. How does Vault combat that kind of the desire of fans to see Vault being represented at a convention while still trying to establish yourself and kind of keep an even keel?
So the thing about conventions from an exhibitor perspective is that they're easiest to operate when you have a booth that's the right size. And that doesn't necessarily mean the smallest booth. So it's Emerald City, where we have 10 by 30 worth of space, is actually a much easier show for us to operate logistically than San Diego, where we're selling out of a 10 by 10. First of all, anybody who's exhibited at a convention knows that there's sort of a fixed probability that you're going to make a sale on any given interaction. So what you're trying to do is maximize the number of effective interactions you can have with, convention goers. And there's only so many interactions you can have per square foot of table, right? So if you have more product than you can reasonably display in 10 linear feet of table, you're not selling as well as you can be. So there's a degree to which having more space actually makes a convention logistically easier on a vendor that's prepared to service that space. It's also nice to be able to spin in a full circle with your arms extended and not knock 10 things down. And to that point, the line will remain similarly sized for the next number of years. So Vault isn't going to start doubling the size of its catalog per year, but our backlist has grown. We've been around for 3 years now, and many of our backlist titles, like Heathen, I hesitate to call Fearscape or Friendo backlist titles because they wrapped so recently. Songs for the Dead. These books are perennial heavy hitters for us at conventions, and so having more space to service the backlist and to sell certain, kinds of consumer goods we haven't announced yet, but that we'll be having in the upcoming years. We should actually have some very fun things on that front at Emerald City this year. Having space to sell that is helpful for us. It actually, again, makes it a bit easier. And having a little bit more sales space can get you to the point that you're making money on a convention instead of just scraping by.
Fair enough. We've talked about you said there about the growth of the line then, and that you're feeling that you're wanting to keep it very much where it's currently standing so you can still establish the Vault brand. I can imagine at conventions it becomes a little bit problematic when there's creators kind of knocking at your door. They're seeing Vault doing well. They're wanting to be on a publisher which is going to support them and to be a good home for their stories. how do conventions work in that regard for yourself in terms of talent coming to you, and how on earth can you navigate that on a busy convention floor?
So I have a very stern-faced lawyer who is dogged about not taking anything ever without a properly executed submission agreement. So we have a company-wide policy that we won't do. No employee of the company will do portfolio reviews or look at submissions on a convention floor. We will sometimes have creators who are not employees of the company do portfolio reviews, which we have to like sort of duly distance ourselves from.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. Because, like I say, when we saw the portfolio review at Vault, I think Tara may have gotten back to you about that, that they had to cap the line within 3 minutes. There were people that were very much looking at Vault and recognizing the quality of the books that have come out and seeing that these creators have a good home there. And so, but that's interesting that you don't take that kind of, certainly from the publisher level, over the table at a convention.
Yeah, so I love to have our creators talk to prospective creators whenever they're willing to. I think that, you know, helps anybody who's interested in working with Vault understand what the process might be like working with us, and you know, it creates that feeling of comity between them that I think has been essential to our success. I think our creators have allied with one another in a way that we see broadly in comics, but I think we see, you know, particularly in the Vault line, and it's been great. But you know, we have to be suitably cautious about how we handle things from a legal perspective. With that said, you know, we have a very robust submission management system that we use, and we're always willing to talk to people about how to make a submission at a convention. But you know, I don't want to look at a pitch about robots with swords at a convention and then later coincidentally publish a book about robots with swords and find the business compromised with the lawsuit. And we've seen, you know, I think the recent litigation surrounding Stranger Things, if it didn't make an entertainment company newly cautious or renew their prior caution about this, it should have.
I think also the way that kind of streamlines what you actually do at conventions, that it is all about meeting fans, introducing the books to new prospective people that may not be aware of the line, and the books that you bring out, and to take that element and make that more, okay, that's business. That's something that we do away from the convention. This is very much a streamlined table. I think that's a very interesting approach, and you don't see that at many other publishers. But I do
want to note on that point that, you know, the convention circuit is a really important part of our acquisition process because we meet new people who want to work with us or with whom we want to work on the convention circuit, and it's a great way to build a rapport and understand what their creative objectives are and what kind of stories they're interested in telling, and whether they see themselves as, you know, doing sci-fi work or fantasy work or books, you know, that are of periodical format or OGN format. We can learn all of those things about a creator. The one thing that we can't do ever is take a pitch packet on the convention floor, and that I think actually makes for a tidier and more effective, you know, acquisitions process, because ultimately working with us, like, you're going to have to find a good rapport with our editorial staff. We are, and I don't want to say, we have a very robust editorial process. We take great care in the books that we put in market. And so, you know, figuring out whether that's the right fit for you as a creator is an extremely important early part of you know, the acquisitions process for us. And that's a sort of hurdle we can clear at a convention. You know, my brother Adrian, who's Vault's editor-in-chief, is often on the convention floor. And like, if you can't figure out a way to get along with Adrian, you're probably not going to figure out a good way to, you know, get a book through to completion in the Vault line. But if you hit it off well with him, then that's, you know, a whole other option.
Fair enough. I think also with the way that you're talking there about how important the convention circuit is to you. I can imagine that you are also being requested to appear at more conventions because you are wanting, people are wanting to see the books, they're wanting to see the creators, they want to see you represented. Can you see the appearance at Vault growing, or is now a good balance of the shows that you do?
I would love to increase the number of conventions that Vault does per year. Before we do that, I think we're going to have to increase the headcount in the office a little bit. I think it would be cart before the horse to commit to, a much more ambitious convention schedule. So I anticipate that for probably the first 3 quarters of 2020, our convention schedule will be more or less as it was this year and the previous year. But in Q4 of 2020 and moving into 2021, I think we'll probably be doing more shows than we were before. So generally, Vault does 1 major convention per quarter. And I think moving into 2021, we'll probably be trying to do, something like 2.
Fair enough. That sounds fair. Well, in that case, I think we can basically ask shows that you've got planned. You've talked about Emerald City. The shows for 2020 are taking submissions and already starting to accept publisher applications. Do you have an idea of the shows that you're going to be doing next year?
Yeah, so definite shows for us next year will be Emerald City, which is in March. That's the 12th to the 14th, if memory serves, of March. Those dates make it very hard for us to also do C2E2, so we probably won't be in Chicago. Then we'll definitely be in San Diego, and we'll definitely be in New York. That covers, 3 big shows. And then we make a few small appearances at local conventions, so we'll always be at SuperCon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, as long as they'll have us. And we may be going abroad for a couple of shows. So we're looking at a show in Australia next year, and I think with the right luck, the company will be even more thoroughly represented at MCM and Thought Bubble next year.
That should be great. Excellent stuff. Well, I mean, we've got a couple of questions that have come in on the chat. We've got ourselves Into the Blue Mister that's asking, is the name of the company a homage to EC's Vault of Horror?
I won't say it's not. The word vault shows up often in comics. So, it's the reference that it's the name of a supermax prison for supervillains in the Marvel universe, right? There's the Vault, obviously EC's Vault of Horror. We also spent a lot of time looking for a single syllable, single word name that was memorable, succinct, sort of suitably general, but also a reference to the fact that, the brand was promising you good things. And so Vault sort of rose to the surface in a long process of name selection. And only after selecting the name did we sort of double back and think about, what things it was hearkening back to in the history of comics.
Well, I think, you talk about the House of Comics, you talk about a contained space, and I think Vault, it's solid. It's a nice, it feels like a place of some real strength, and I think that's what you definitely see from the books. I'm a massive fan of Vault. These Savage Shores is easily one of my favorite books of the last couple of years. Friendo is easily one of my favorite books of the last 12 months. I'm a huge fan of what you do, and we look forward to seeing you at more and more shows, because the more people find out about Vault, the better, because it's definitely worthwhile. Listen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on and having a quick chat with us, and talking to us about your about Vault and its convention relationship. I think that's really cool. Can you tell us, or tell everyone, where people can find out more about Vault and where people can find out what shows you're up to?
Yeah, so our website is kept pretty up to date, vaultcomics.com. We're also very, very active on Twitter, a little less active on Facebook and Instagram. But if you're ever wondering what's going on at Vault, sort of to the minute, Twitter is the place to take a look.
Excellent stuff. Listen, thank you so much indeed for joining us. I really appreciate it. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, sir.
Thanks for having me. Be well.
Take care. Excellent. That was Damien Wassel then. Do check out Vault Comics because they are absolutely some of the best books out there. I mean, I've mentioned on Twitter before as well about the strength of the brand and strength of the books. And I talked about their sales, which have done really well. Like I say, they've gone into like the top 7 publishers within 3 years. That's incredible. That's just absolutely incredible. It's all down to the creators. There's some great books that they're bringing out. Do check them out. They're not your standard comics. It's not your standard cape stuff. It's just really strong stories. Image are keeping a close eye on the rearview mirror because that's where they are. So that's really cool. So excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed for Damien for joining us for that. Bit of a break now, just to say thank you very much indeed to everyone for joining us on the show. As always, I am going to be doing a Patreon-only stream directly after this. We're going to be talking about Disney Plus. We're going to be talking about The Mandalorian a bit, but we are going to be talking about Disney's strategy in doing these launches beyond the US market and how problematic that could actually be for the brands when people are excited about and seeing stuff on social media and they can't actually see it for themselves. So we're going to be doing that. If you do support us on patreon.com/EnglishmanSDCC. Something else as well I want to very quickly put out there, because we are wanting to increase our presence on social media, on Facebook and also on Twitter as well. And this is where I'm going to put out a little bit of a open recruitment drive, as it were. Basically, I'm wanting to find people who are interested in comic conventions, that we can spread the word about great shows, about creators that are appearing at shows, artists, talent, multimedia, cartoonists, whatever. Basically, I'm looking for 2 or 3 people who are willing to just, whenever they're going on social media and they spot something that they feel can be represented on the Convention Collective that could be really of interest to people who are following our Facebook and Twitter, to basically just share all the stories that they spot, or as many stories as they can, on our social media, so we can keep people up to date with the shows that matter. If you can DM me, if you're interested in taking part in this, you can DM me on Twitter at EnglishmanSDCC, or you can find me on Facebook, Leonard Sultana, or if you just message the Convention Collective as well. If it's something that interests you, maybe you are on social media a lot and you just happen to be able to share something. Twitter's very easy to do if you're, say, using iOS or whatever, that you can just spot a tweet, say someone is saying, I'm going to be appearing at this convention, that you can just quickly share to our feed and we can spread the word about great shows. DM me, like I say, Englishman SDCC, or indeed on Facebook, Leonard Sultana. Do drop me a line. I'd really like to kind of get some more, because I can only share as much as I can. Let's see if we can get a couple more bodies involved. I will try and recompense as much as I can. Let's see what we can do. Let's have a chat. Do DM me and let me know what we can do. Right. That was interview number 1. Thank you very much indeed to Damien. Now it's time for interview number 2. And this one, we won't be keeping too long because it's bloody late where she is. We've got we've got Tina, also known. Go on then. What time is it over there?
2 a.m. on Monday.
Good Lord. Okay. It's time travel, man. It's Monday already. Good grief. This is Tina Gan, also known as Red.Diva. She's, if you've been a long-time viewer of the Talkin Con shows, you know Tina's face because she's ace. And we love to have her on, and we love to have her joining us. Thank you very much indeed for taking time to come on. You're wanting to talk about a very specific show.
Yes.
But we'll get into that first. First things first, let's introduce yourself. This is Tina Gan. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your convention history and your convention experience.
Well, I've been a geek for a long time since I was young, but I've been doing it alone. And then when I finally found a bit of my tribe in local fans, and I got connected with them. And I so decided to write a blog, and I wrote about the local scene here and interviewed some of the artists in the Southeast Asia region. So then the blog grew, and I got into some media lists, and I covered some conventions, including San Diego, although I no longer attend that. And mainly I'm just focusing on Singapore or Southeast Asia related conventions and artists, even the indie ones or the freelance ones, and try to boost their signals when they are either boothing in the artist alley in the conventions, or they are doing something new or interesting, so that I feel that the voice for the Southeast Asian region is kind of like a mystery. People know Asia as like Japan, Korea, or maybe China, but you may not know how diverse Southeast Asia is, and that there's so many languages and religions and stories that are very, very unique and are not shown to the world yet. And I think we are an emerging kind of like place where people are searching for stories to tell, and that's how my focus is now.
I think the thing that many people would be surprised about is just how big the shows are as well in the Asian market. Singapore is huge. I mean, if I remember correctly, I mean the American shows, they're not the biggest conventions out there. It's the Asian shows which are the size is just through the scale. It's just off the scale.
Well, I think they do a great business in our show. What I heard was the 2018 show, well, 2 days only. I think it was about 45,000 to 50,000 of an audience, visitors visiting. And because of how central Singapore is, so people like from Malaysia, Philippines, and Indonesia, they will fly in, and then they get to meet the guests. So we have like mixed Southeast Asian pool of people coming in, not just the locals. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think I'm also really interested in the talent that is attracted to the Asian shows, especially to Singapore, because you've been sharing a lot of the guests that are going to be coming, and they are there's a fair number of Western comic creators, actors, actresses, talent from the Western arms of entertainment. What's the kind of ratio? What's the kind of balance between Asian talent and also say the Western talent?
Yeah, I'd like to correct you about the celebrities.
Oh.
We haven't really got onto that yet.
Okay.
We're very focused on comics and partially cosplay and some toy designers. Previously, some history about the con. It was actually set up by a local company called Play Imaginative, and then Reed Pop bought it in 2010. And at the beginning, when they wanted to attract the audiences, they had a lot of Westerners, artists coming in, like Matt Fraction and Gail Simone. So after that, we also felt that as more and more people start attend the con, we felt that the local or the Southeast Asian people need more focus as well. So there is and as well as women creators. And in the last 3 years, I think they have a good pool of women guests coming in, which we are happy about. And so I think it has become like quite balanced, I should say, because their tagline is East meets West. So they will still have manga artists and local artists. So like Sunny Liu might be one of the guests last year, and this year is Ko Hong Ting, another artist that's putting out Chinese-based style manga comic kind of mixed thing going on about assassins, and it's like a mixed vehicle, a kind of like mixed match kind of thing.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm curious about the changes that Repop may have introduced to Singapore, because when Repop do take over a franchise or a convention, they do kind of make changes to maybe reflect the Western model that they if it ain't broke, if it works, that's how they work. But they certainly with shows like New York and the Emerald City, they are starting to introduce the other media and turning it more into a pop culture event. Is that something that has happened with Singapore? What were the changes when
I
Repop
think some of
came
the
in?
guests who attended were probably a bit culture shocked because there's quite a lot of the anime crowd here. Anime is huge. It's like bigger than comics. So they need to attract that crowd as well. And a lot of the cosplayers are big anime fans. So they'll have a lot of anime music going on, which is quite distracting, but it gives it the kind of a vibe. And so it's not just the Western part of it. And I think STGCC kind of fused both of them together in the way that it was different from the other Westerns kind of Comic Cons that they acquired. Also, this year, the STGCC was Singapore Toy Games Comic Con. It was such a long name and such a tongue twister. So this year they decided to change it and shorten it to Singapore Comic Con, which is like in line with all the other Comic Cons that they have acquired and put out. Although they said that the focus is not just comics, there will still be toys and games. Although I feel that somehow these two sectors are still a little bit lacking. Comics still remains the main focus from what I see from the guests that they invite, which includes like this year big A-listers. They have actually changed the dates as well from September to December because they are running in conjunction with the Singapore Media Festival, and that's part of like a government-related initiative. So I think they get something from that, yeah. So the A-listers are really interesting this year. We have like Greg Capullo and Andy Kubert, and we have interesting guests like Sarah Anderson from Sarah's Scribbles. I think a few of us are very interested and excited to meet her. And there's Jock, which I'm very excited to meet as well. And we have returning guests like David Mack. We haven't seen him last year, so we'll be seeing him again this year. And there are also the local writer artist, Ko Hong Ting, that I was telling you about just now. And there's also a Malaysian creator. She does a web comic. I'm not sure if you have heard of it from a viral, either some viral news article. She writes about my giant nerd boyfriend, because her boyfriend is much taller than her. So she has a web, and her nickname, she got a pseudonym. Her pseudonym is Fishball, and she's quite popular here.
I think I have heard of this. Yeah,
a very cute web comic. If you can search on it, I think it's online as well. Yeah, she was huge when she was here for not a Comic Con, but like an illustration arts fest 2 years ago. Her book sold out in 40 minutes.
Wow,
so a huge line. Yeah, so we have a interesting guest this year. I think we are excited. I think more interesting than last year, because the last year was a bit of a downer. They had more repeat guests, which we have already met before. And so this year's, I think some of the comic fans are quite interested, especially when they heard like Andy Kubert and Greg Capullo. I'm sure they are just gathering all their comics ready to be signed.
Well, I think the appeal as well, certainly for some Western artists, will be the fact that they're number one, it's all being paid for. Yes. They are being paid to come, and they can explore a part of the world that they've not visited before, and it's a little bit of an adventure for them as well. So I can imagine that there'll be several of them that will be arriving a couple of days before, leaving a couple of days later, and getting the chance to explore Singapore, which I think is very cool. We've got 1 or 2 people that are jumping in already. We've got ourselves Andrew English. It's reminding us that STGCC, let's go for the original name, is the same weekend as Wales Comic Con. So we are still in that period of the year. I mean, we've been talking about this ever since we started the Hangout. I think I brought this up the last time we kind of spoke face to face, that there's all these shows, and it's not just like a con season. It just rolls throughout the year. And like you say, the shift into December, it was a big thing. And the fact that was that something that was kind of imposed on the show, or was it something that was kind of, it just felt right as a natural fit to shift those dates to align with this media show?
Yeah, because Reed also does some activities concerning the Singapore Media Festival. They do the Asia TV Forum, so maybe they found more synergy during that week or fortnight when these festivals are running, and they can pitch about the Singapore Comic Con in that same sphere regarding pop culture. So maybe that's what the reason is changing the dates. At first, we were wondering if any of the guests would actually come because it's December and it's holiday season. But apparently, many of them said yes.
They've got to afford the Christmas presents. They need to afford them, and the best way to do that is to work. And so,
Marina Bay Sands. So,
since Repop took over, I mean, I've been following your feed for a while. I mean, I'd like to think we've been friends for a while, and it's been great to see Singapore Comic Con become very much a part of the conversation when it comes to world comic conventions. It's one of those shows that now is talked about as one of the major shows across the globe. How has the growth of Singapore Comic Con affected the audience and the people that attend the show?
Yeah, I think more people, especially we are seeing younger ones, younger people getting more interested in comics. So I have to say that the superhero movies help as well. So they are more curious about the origins of these comics characters, and they do come to the show because it's now you can't really tear them apart anymore. It's just like infused together in movies, comics, books. It's all together into one. So they don't see it as something very separate, I guess. But the older ones, they're still very traditional. So they are actually more into the comic side of things. And they have their collections and they will actually come for the guests. But the younger ones are a bit more like mixed.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that what fascinates me about the South Asian market and just Asian reading of comics, I mean, the three that absolutely fascinate me is obviously you've got your Western comics with your superheroes, you have your science fiction and your very literary, your sense of European publishing, but then you have the manga element as well. Over here, when you come to Western shows, manga is the niche.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously for Singapore, it's kind of flipped. Yeah. How has Western comics then been grown and developed, especially with the success of, say, for example, the MCU and the other media that's introducing these characters to the Asian market? How's that shifted the perception of Western comics?
I think it looks cooler now with the superhero movies, and therefore that they are more interested in that. I also see that because Kinokuniya is one of the bookstores that actually support comics. They have quite a big section on comics, and what they do is they buy mostly trades. So those people who cannot afford or have the time to get comics every week, they will look for the trades and they'll buy. Like me, I like to read it all together. And that gives us opportunity to actually catch up with the comics as well. I'm not really that intimate about manga because mostly they are in either Japanese or Chinese, and my Chinese
sure.
Side.
Fair enough.
I'm more into the Western side of things. But yes, manga is really huge. Anime is like huge. It's the big thing here. There are mix of the local style, which is like manga style, but in English. Yeah, they have their own audience, like Mr. Kiasu, which is a local idiom on afraid to lose. So this character has been going on for quite some time, and there's a revival on that. And people, the young ones who may not have known him when he first was published, they are like getting interested in that again, as well as the old fans. So there is a small revival, I guess. I think one of the big things that may have caused this as well is Sunny Liu's book that won a few Eisner Awards. So I think that made some of the creators a little more encouraged, I guess, about creating something that will be able to reach an international audience. So maybe we'll get there. I guess our audience here is still, I mean, if you're talking about Singapore alone, it's really small.
Sure.
Really, yeah.
Sure. I mean, that's why I've always been fascinated about the way that Western comics are perceived in that market, purely because the metabolism of Western comics. I mean, we're talking about the 30-page floppy. I mean, we're talking every week. There's a new issue. There's a new all these books. Whereas with the manga market, it is more geared towards trades. The books are a lot thicker. They're a lot more. It's more of it's a slower metabolism for reading. So I find the combination of the two, how they juxtapose, is really interesting.
You're a very niche group of people. Like if you talk about comics, you kind of know who are the people who are buying in Singapore. Like these are the people, you know. Because one of the reasons is like when they import the books over, it's not that cheap either, right? It might be like $3 US or something. I can't remember, you know, in the States. But over here, it can be Singapore dollars 15 or $10. So it's not like something that you can buy in bulk every week. It's an expensive affair. That's one of the reasons that, you know, most people might not be that avid collectors every week.
That's like I say, it is interesting, and I find the cultural divide. But like you say, there's a recognition of the creator, and like you say, there's some great talent that's going. When we talk about comic conventions, certainly here in the UK, and it's certainly becoming a little bit more prevalent in the Western shows as well, we are seeing the convention being the hub of a slightly bigger festival element, and there's more stuff that's happening outside of the building. So San Diego Comic Con, the offsites are now as big, if not bigger, than the actual convention. Here in the UK, Thought Bubble, it's that 2-day convention, but the festival takes over the course of a week. Is that something that the Singapore show and the South Asian shows do, or is it more just about the 2-day convention, 3-day convention?
No, it doesn't really spill out of the convention hall. Yeah, it's mainly around that area because no matter what, that audience is still quite a niche audience. If people do wondering, not knowing anything about comics or manga, they are most probably there because they are curious about what's happening with the cosplayers outside in their costumes and everything. So yeah, it doesn't really spill out outside of the convention hall. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so in that case, we're talking about Singapore Convention Comic Con. I'm guessing it only kind of really ramps up, and the whole frenetic energy only really ramps up actually during the dates of the show, which is next week, not next weekend, weekend after.
7th and 8th of December. We'll be having a media preview 2 days before, so maybe there'll be some news coming out from my blog or social media feed because some of the guests will be here and we'll get to meet them as a preview to the show.
That'd be cool. Excellent. And for yourself, is there anyone in particular that you're interested in catching up with? Is anyone? I mean, like you say, I mean, I did love the giggle in the voice as you got excited about meeting Jock.
Yes, I really love his art, and I don't know. I mean, it's a rare chance to meet him, so I really want to tell him how I appreciate his artwork and his ideas. I would like to meet Sarah Anderson because her webcomic is hilarious. I'd like to see how she's like in person. Of course, Greg Capullo. I mean, he's well known and it's like, you know, phenomenal artist for Batman. There's another guy called Andrew Iacarino or something like this. He draws really wonderful posters. I saw his feed on Instagram, like really the old school style posters, that movie posters that you see, not just the Photoshop cut and paste types that are so prevalent these days. Yeah, I think, of course, my favorite, as always, David Mack. We want to say hello to him. He's our favorite. I think we all love him because he's just so nice to hang around with. Yeah, I think these are the main ones I'm looking forward to.
Cool. Well, when you see Jock, say hi. It was great to catch up with him at Thought Bubble the weekend just gone. Even though I did get home and discover about 5 or 6 books, which I completely forgot to take with me. So, oh yes, so I'm just gonna have to hang fire until he's back at a convention on in the UK. So fingers crossed we'll see him again. But it sounds like it's going to be an amazing show.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you online to find all about the updates about Singapore Comic Con?
Okay, you can find me as red.diva on Twitter, Facebook, and well, Instagram as well sometimes. But you see more of my private stuff on Instagram, which I don't mind. I write occasionally on my blog whenever I have time. My blog is at red.diva.blogspot.com. That's where you can find me. I'm usually on social media all the time.
Okay, and dare I ask, because the last time you and I saw each other, which is still one of my favorite moments of Comic Con, Talkin Con, because we caught up at Star Wars Celebration in London.
Yes.
And that was when we had Ray Park just kind of dive in.
Yeah.
That was a fun show. That was a fun episode. That was cool. Will you be going to Star Wars next year?
Yes, I'm going. I have tickets. Woo!
Excellent stuff. Looking forward to seeing the updates coming out of that, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing what comes out of Singapore Comic Con, because like I say, the way that it's grown into a convention on a global scale, it's definitely one of the shows that we talk about when it comes to the global convention circuit. And Singapore is definitely one of those shows that if you're watching this and you want to go a little bit further afield, it's a show that you need to check out. So, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Tina, thank you so much indeed for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, nice to be around, and hi to those who remember me.
Oh, we remember you, of course we do. But what we're now going to let you do is get to sleep. Because it's late for you, we know. Tina, thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. So there you go, Tina Gan. Oh, it's always great to talk to her because she's always so infectious about the shows that she's involved in. And yeah, like I say, Singapore Comic Con, if you've been following the social media feeds and the way that the show has been growing and developing, I think it's been really encouraging for that market. And certainly for, I mean, even last year, I mean, she was talking there about Jock. I mean, but there were a couple of artists that went over, certainly from the UK, that were just really excited about heading out to Singapore just to explore. And they did go for the week before, the week after, and they turned it into a very big adventure for them, which means they're excited, which means everyone's excited at the show. So it's I think it's a very cool thing indeed. But that's Singapore Comic Con. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed to Damien and Russell for joining us at the beginning. Thank you very much indeed for Tina for joining us at the back end. And thank you very much indeed for watching. I have been I've been paying attention to the chat, but to be fair, everyone's just kind of like having a chat amongst themselves, which is great. So thank you very much indeed for getting on. I know that we've got ourselves, let's have a look at this, about a couple of things. Super Cat Chick is joining us for the first time in a while. It's great to have you joining on the chat. It's good to have you here. Talking about, I want to give a shout out to Verizon for the free year of Disney Plus. Yes, the conventions this year when they were handing out those vouchers have been appreciated very much by the fans. I'm going to get into that when it comes to the Patreon stream, which we're going to get set up for directly after the hour. Another thing that I just want to very quickly cover is the guests that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Like I say, we are going to try and get Katrina Fox from Comic Sketch Art on a future show. She is a little bit tied up with a convention at the moment with Greg Capullo, of all things, and Donny Cates as well, who doesn't seem to want to go home. Donny Cates has only just gotten married, and yet he still seems to want to be out on the convention circuit. So yeah, that's where she is at the moment. We are wanting to get her on the show because I do want to talk to her about Comic Sketch Art and about their representation at conventions, because I think it's an important conversation to have. We have got ourselves next week Christine Valeda, who is the wife of one of the greats of comics, and it's going to be an interesting conversation to talk to Christine, because Christina, sorry, because sorry, I'm just getting a couple of messages coming through, and I just want to make sure that I want to get those covered. Very interested to talk to her because of her experience with conventions, and also when she went with Len. This is Len Wein, by the way, who she was married to, the late great master editor of comics. But she has her own experience with conventions and with comics, and it's going to be great to talk to her about her experience with conventions, and seeing as somebody who has seen the convention landscape change over the decades, how she could possibly perceive how conventions could go further down the line. So it's going to be interesting to talk to Christina. So that's her. We were going to be talking to Jim Fry, the con guy, who some of you may have seen on social media. Good guy. He runs a show similar to mine, but with better production value. He's got a little bit more money behind him, so he's got a studio and everything, and it all looks very, very good indeed. That's Jim Fry, the con guy, who was going to be coming on the 8th of December, but unfortunately he's going to be tied up with family stuff, which means it's going to be a Wales Comic Con special. I'm going to be broadcasting from Telford, which is not in Wales, but we're going to be talking about the Telford takeover. I'm looking forward to attending Wales Comic Con, if anything, because I want to see how the show has grown and developed into this thing, which now has to take part in a dedicated convention center just to survive. It's not something that can just be thrown together in a venue which isn't built for it. So that's going to be on the 8th of December. 22nd is going to be our Christmas for Nerds show. Still looking for a guest for that, but we're going to be talking about what you can possibly get up to over the festive season. That's going to be taking part on the 22nd of December. We may have another guest lined up for that as well. Fingers crossed. We've got, like I said, there's stuff that we got kind of getting ourselves sorted out. The 15th of December show, unfortunately, won't be able to take part because as a working DJ, some jobs have come in, and I am going to be working that day. And then we are going to be doing our New Year's show, a New Year's Eve show, which is on the 29th of December, which is the year to come. Looking forward to 2020 and going forward for that. So let's have a look at this. Andrew English is talking about Wales Comic Con. Looks like a few of us are going to be there. I'm only going to be going Saturday. I'm going to be going on the Sunday. Like I say, I'm going to do that live show from there. So I'm going to hopefully rope some people in to talk about Wales Comic Con about that. Let's have a look at other. Yeah, everyone's just kind of chatting amongst themselves, which is great. And everyone's really excited about having Super Catchy come back, which is great. So there. And Toby Toledo talking about Mandalorian. Don't worry, spoiler free. Mando Yodrian. Okay, a little bit spoiler free. Has been superb after only 3 episodes. Only downside I can't binge the whole thing. Lol. This is what we're going to get into on the stream after this. We're going to go to Patreon, and we're going to talk about basically Disney Plus and its decision to broadcast only in North America and Canada for now, when we have a worldwide market, which there's all sorts of things that we're going to get into, and I'm going to launch into that. So there we go. I think that's pretty much us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's show. Once again, are looking for 1 or 2 people to jump on our social media team, if anything, just to kind of like get the login, so you can, if you spot something that you feel that other convention fans would be interested in finding out about, perhaps a guest announcement, a new show, those would be interesting. If you find out about a show that perhaps we don't know about and we want to spread the word about great shows, jump in on my social media, on my DM. By all means, just drop me a line if you are interested in taking part. I will do my best to kind of recompense, but that's entirely down to funds and whatever we can arrange. But we're looking for people who are excited and interested in comic conventions, who will be interested in just dropping some useful information to fans to kind of spread the word about shows that you think that we should be spreading the word about. So there we go. Right, we're out. Thank you very much indeed for the for your company this evening. Christine Valida next week. Looking forward to talking to her, reminiscing a little bit about Len Wein, and also talking about her convention experience in a special interview next Sunday. That's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. Till then, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you on next week's show. Take care.